Why is there no superhero movie burnout when it comes to Marvel? I mean, just look at the past year of movies. We have Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Infinity War. These three movies together grossed a total of over $4 billion with a B. Why do people keep seeing these movies? Why haven't they gotten tired yet? And what direction should Marvel go in the future? Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Beware here today, and we are going to be discussing the Sentry and why I think he should be Marvel's next big franchise. So, first, let's answer the question that we asked at the beginning: why hasn't Marvel suffered from superhero fatigue yet? Of course, there's the fact that it's an interconnected universe with a continual story, but that didn't get people to go see Justice League. No, what makes Marvel continuously successful is the way it produces different genres of movies that just happen to fall under the superhero banner. No, not that banner. Ant-Man was a heist movie. Civil War was a character drama. The first two Thors were high fantasy, while Ragnarok was a hardline comedy. The first Avenger was a period piece, Spider-Man Homecoming was a high school comedy, while the Guardians movies are always very sci-fi. What I'm saying is, we love to go see Marvel movies because, while the writing may tend to feel samey, the situations and themes are always something new and cool, and we see Marvel getting more creative in the future, as it's rumored that the next big franchise will focus on the Eternals, a pretty deep cut from the comic books. But because the general audience trusts the Marvel brand, they aren't afraid to try new things like the Eternals to draw people in. So what's the point of all this? Well, I want to propose a direction that I think Marvel should go because it falls right in line with their try something new philosophy and would make for some kick-ass movies. I'm talking about the Sentry. If you don't know anything about Sentry, he's one of the lesser-known modern Marvel characters, created in the year 2000. On the surface, he appears just to be a Superman ripoff, complete with cape and even the S prominently displayed on his torso. Even his powers, described as the strength of 1,000,000 exploding suns, appears to be a nod to Superman's solar-based powers. But Sentry is very different from Superman, in enough ways to make him one of the most fascinating comic book characters ever conceived. So let's dive in. Robert Reynolds is just a normal everyday guy with a normal everyday gut. One day, he stumbles upon the memory that he used to be a powerful hero known as the Sentry. A flood of memories comes storming in, including that he used to be great friends with some of the most well-known Marvel heroes: Spider-Man, Mr. Fantastic, Hulk, Iron Man, and even Professor X. But the question was, why didn't they remember him? Reynolds follows this question in a hunt to discover what happened to his identity as the Sentry. I won't spoil the whole plot, but I will say that at the end of the story, it leads to Reynolds discovering that the greatest enemy of the Sentry, a powerful monster known only as the Void, was actually a dark part of Reynolds' own psyche. In fact, Robert gave up the power of the Sentry as well as erased the memory of everyone who knew about him, so that the Void could never return and wreak destruction upon the world. At the end of his story, he is faced with the choice of whether he should forget again or regain his godlike powers. Speaking of godlike powers, let's talk about that for a minute. Everyone compares Sentry to Superman, but they aren't as similar as people think. Superman's abilities are pretty straightforward. He's strong, he's tough, he can fly, he's got cold breath and hot eyes. All this comes from his alien biology, which lets him absorb solar radiation. Sentry has the strength and the flight and the durability, yeah. He can even shoot lasers out of his eyes as well as his hands. Oh, and he can teleport, and manipulate matter on a molecular level, and create holograms, and use telekinesis, and wipe people's minds, warp reality to an unlimited extent, regenerate from all injury if you can somehow manage to hurt him, grant any amount of his power to others, and he's functionally immortal. Yeah, you heard that last one right. You can completely vaporize his body, and he'll just regenerate from nothing. Suck it, Wolverine. What's even stranger is where his powers come from. He took a serum designed to replicate and boost the effects of the Super Soldier Serum, the one taken by Captain America, Steve Rogers. He took this serum while high on meth. Oh yeah, he's a former meth head, forgot to mention that. And his explosive rebirth into Sentry killed virtually everyone in the lab where the serum was devised. Unlike the serum used by Cap, this Sentry serum shifts the molecules of the Taker forward in time by a fraction of a second, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. He exists partially in a different reality, and his powers can be basically anything. What is perhaps most interesting is that the Void, a physical manifestation of Reynolds' darker nature, is just as powerful as the Sentry. The two are evenly matched, as they are born of the same person. Now, it's important to point out that no one really knows how Sentry's powers work. There's the weird explanation of the serum that really doesn't make any sense, but characters inside the comics have theorized what actually caused him to become this way. Some think that an interdimensional entity of some sort entered into reality through the serum, and this granted Reynolds his reality warping abilities. On the other hand, the writing seems to imply that the Void is similar to, if not the same thing, as the Angel of Death from the Old Testament in the Bible, the one that killed a bunch of firstborn sons in ancient Egypt. This would mean that a piece of God himself lives inside the Sentry, or because this is Marvel, a piece of the One Above All lives inside the Sentry. Whatever the case may be when it comes to the Sentry's powers, we know that he is an absolute monster. Marvel even named him the most powerful superhero in the world at one point. Okay, so Sentry is cool and he's really strong, but why should Marvel make a movie about him when they have so many other characters? Why not make a Orb movie? Actually, scratch that. Who would want an Orb movie? Dude's got an eyeball for a head. Who wants to look at that? Gross. Plus, everybody would constantly be thinking about whether it's moist or not. You know, it's like it's a real human eye. And then how uncomfortable it is if a fly lands on his eyeball head, little fly feet scrambling around on his cornea and his pupil. Ugh. And then they'll go back to thinking about the moistness, and then just about how much they hate the word moist. It's like just such an unpleasant word. Yeah, Orb is no good. Don't make a movie about him. Instead, make a movie about Sentry. He would be perfect for an MCU movie because he fits that trend I was talking about earlier. It's different. Marvel has yet to release a mystery movie, a detective story with intrigue and suspense. Imagine a movie about Robert Reynolds going around to Bruce Banner and Doctor Strange and Tony Stark, trying to piece together his past, all interspersed with flashbacks to Sentry fighting the Void, or maybe showing us his origin. Plus, we know that Captain Marvel is coming to the MCU next spring, and Kevin Feige himself has described her as powerful enough to punch through moons. So we know that Marvel is no longer shying away from showing us how crazy strong these characters can actually be. We even got a little taste of this in Infinity War, with Thor's ridiculous feats in Nidavellir. Sentry can be crazy powerful like he is in the comics, and audiences won't be confused, or whatever stupid reason they use to keep these characters from being strong up until now. Now I know what you're thinking. Sentry is too strong. A movie about him will be boring. It's just like Superman is boring. So let's talk about Superman for just a second. Superman can either be really cool or really lame, and it all depends on who's writing the story that he's in. When Superman is shown to be completely invincible, on top of everything, unfazed by all that happens to him, he's boring AF. When Superman is depicted as a lonely god, unable to understand humanity or unwilling to protect it, the story is boring because we can't relate to him at all. Superman is cool when he's challenged, when his power is ridiculous and impressive, but so is the power of his enemy. When Clark has to really struggle to win, when he has to use his powers creatively, or when there are stakes that make his job harder. That's when it's fun to watch Superman fight dudes. And if you absolutely must have him be completely overpowered, use him like One Punch Man. Build up the tension that other characters are getting really hurt or even dying, until Superman arrives and saves them. This gives us some tension, something to care about. Speaking of care, Superman can be relatable. He's a dork. He's a farm boy in a big city with a job and a boss and deadlines. He's just a regular guy who happens to be crazy strong. When we see how a regular guy chooses to use godly power, and he uses it to help people because it's the right thing to do, that's cool and it makes us feel good. When we see an unearthly god decide to protect Earth only because he happens to be boning Lois Lane that week, we don't care about him at all. So back to Sentry. These two writing missteps are nearly impossible to make with him because of his character. He can't be stupid overpowered because his strength is directly tied to his greatest enemy's strength. There's tension because his psyche is fragile, and we don't know if or when he can call upon the power of the Sentry. Then he's just stuck as Robert Reynolds. He's relatable because most of the time he's just a guy like you and me. He has things he's lost, important information he needs to discover, and difficult choices to make. He's such a cool character. He's really good. I can't believe he's not more popular than he is right now, because I think that the general population would love a Sentry movie. So that's why I want a Sentry trilogy in the MCU. Make it happen, Feige, you beautiful genius madman, you. And when Robert Reynolds is a household name just like Tony Stark, you can send me my check in the mail. Alright, well that's it, guys. Thanks for watching this video and for sticking through all of it. I hope you liked it. I hope I made a couple new Sentry fans here today. Who do you think would make a good addition to the MCU? And who would you want to play the Sentry? Let me know down in the comments below. This has been Beware. Don't forget to stay frosty.